That's why I really identify the Zeitgeist Movement, because it starts at the root cause of everything. We're not dealing with shit on the surface, all this bullshit that doesn't really have any bearing over what's going on in the world. You know, it's just merely a symptom of this incredibly profoundly sick society that we live in. I'm Chad Fisher. I'm a comedian. I live in Austin, Texas. I try to bring awareness to important social issues through comedy and through laughter and everything like that. Bring awareness to like the failed system that we currently live in, and how it doesn't meet the needs of people, and also just to hold things up to the light of reason and kind of make fun of it, and so that people can look at things a different way and maybe not feel as ostracized from their community or family or friends, and realize that everything is kind of like this current system and the situations that we're living under right now are really silly, and that there's a better way, you know. Well, I think with anyone, it begins with yourself. It begins with like you realizing that things are silly. One story that I tell people sometimes, and that I remember specifically, was from when I was a child. My mom had a day job, and she also had to work as a waitress at night. And I remember one time she came home really late on a weekend. It was like 11 p.m., 11:30 or something like that. And I didn't get to see her all day, and I was upset about this at the time. I was a young kid, probably 7, 8 years old maybe. And I remember asking her, like, Mom, why do you have to work so much? Why are you always gone? Why don't I get to see you? And I remember she pulled out like a big wad of ones from working that night as a waitress, and she started like flapping around and was like, it's because of this. I have to make money so I can put a roof over your head, so I can put clothes on you and your brothers, so I can give you guys food, all this stuff. And I remember her saying this to me, and even as a young child, I remember thinking like, that sounds stupid as hell, you know, that's dumb as shit. Why would we do this, you know? And as a child, of course, you think like, oh, maybe I'm overstepping my bounds, I shouldn't say things like this, you know? So you kind of like, just kind of let these thoughts ruminate. And that's how it started with me, was just like looking at the world and realizing it was kind of silly what we were putting people through and everything. And as I became older, I started to realize it more and more, and see it more and more, and see it, and not just, I saw it everywhere, and in almost every walk of life, everything was affected by this. And the more you see it, the more you recognize it, the more you realize it's all bullshit, and that it can be done in a better way. When I was in college at the time, a friend of mine, I helped people write papers as an English major, and a friend of mine who was kind of always would share new ideas with me and everything like that. He was kind of a radical thinker, I guess you could say. He had just was watching it one day on his computer, and I watched like 5 or 10 minutes of it, and I remember becoming like arrested with the message and the information that's being conveyed. And I thought like, wow, this is really cool. And I remember asking the guy like, what is this? And he's like, oh, this is Zeitgeist, you never heard about it? I'm like, no. And so that night I went home and watched the first Zeitgeist film in its entirety, and I like watched it again, like right after I finished it. I started it right over again. And I just remember thinking, like, it just opened my eyes up. Some of the things that I was thinking about when I was driving home after seeing just a little clip of it, like I saw like the first 30 minutes of it, I think, and then drove home to watch the rest of it. And I was just like, my mind was blown driving home, like thinking like, holy shit, Jesus didn't exist. You know what I'm saying? Or like, Jesus is a myth, or it's like borrowed from all this other stuff, you know what I mean? And I was just super interested in it, obviously, because it gave credence to some of the thoughts that I had already had, you know, and it was well researched, well thought out, well articulated. Peter did an amazing job articulating his thoughts in that, and I've just never seen anything put so clearly and so digestible, you know. As you see, if you watch the film, you see the things that shouldn't be complicated have been made complicated in order to keep people from understanding them or to keep people from wanting to change them. And so like with economics especially, people are told like, oh, it's just this invisible hand, it's the shit you wouldn't understand, you just don't get it, you don't get it. You know, go get a degree in economics, then we'll come back and talk to me, because right now you don't know shit. And to think that like, to be so dismissive and think that people don't have ideas to better the world and everything like that based on credentialism, I think is silly. And so immediately after watching it, yeah, I began to understand that it was incredibly important, and the message that was being conveyed was something that everyone needed to hear. And so from that point on, I was talking about it constantly, nonstop, and then when Addendum came out, obviously I was all over that. And then after Addendum was when I started to say that I wanted to get more involved in the movement and everything. And so I'm originally from Ohio, and when I moved to Austin, Texas, I became more active in the Zeitgeist chapter in Austin, and started lending my talents as a comedian to the movement. And I guess the rest is history, so to speak. After that, I've been a guest on Culture in Decline, and also performed at the Zeitgeist Media Festival. And it's been an amazing experience, and I've met like amazing people throughout the way, but I've also gained a lot of knowledge from people in different walks of life, because the movement is very diverse. It has people in so many different realms of society and industry and everything like that. So it's very interesting to get other people's perspective, people that have the credentials that people are seeking and everything like that. So I don't want to sound like a cheerleader, but honestly, like almost everything I hear that comes from the Zeitgeist Movement, that's ordained by the Zeitgeist Movement, or reflected through the Zeitgeist Movement, I agree with, particularly economics, particularly the notion that that everyone's basic human needs can be met, and that we shouldn't have to pay to live on this earth. That people should be taken care of. As I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, like 40,000 people die every day because they don't have food, water, or preventable diseases. This is all something that can totally be avoided, and it should be avoided. And to call ourselves a civilized society when we see that happening day in and day out, I think is incredibly irresponsible. You know, it's also incredibly irresponsible to say like we're an incredibly civilized society, and then we see people getting murdered every day via the death penalty and everything like that. And war and destruction, and we see that like war is an acceptable means for communication in this world and everything. It's just kind of silly, you know, to call ourselves so much better than every other species on Earth, or that we're like the super hyper civilized lot, is irresponsible to say the least, man. We're killing each other, you know, for $1, which doesn't mean shit. You know what I mean? So I agree with most things, well, pretty much every tenet that the Zeitgeist Movement offers. I think that we can take care of every human being on this earth. It's proven, and especially when we have the right motives. Right now, everyone's motive is that if you're not in an economically viable region, or if you don't have something to contribute to society with like making some bullshit plastic piece of machinery or gadget or something like that, that you don't matter. And that's absurd, you know, and it's incredibly sad, and I think it's arrogant as shit to say something like that, you know. So really just and also obviously I agree with the sustainability aspect of the movement and everything. As you see, we're wasting so many resources every day, you know, for the sake of for the economy and everything. And everything that you see, everything that's born out of this fucked up system, this fucked up world, is all birthed because of this system that we have, you know. And there's people out there, there's people like Stefan Molyneux, Alex Jones, these guys that get out there and say like, oh, it's the globalists, and it's these people, and it's that people, and we got to get rid of these families that are running the world. And I think that's ignorant as shit to say, because once you get rid of all these families, you put them in jail, their second cousins or their friends or their business partners are just going to assume their role and their responsibilities in fucking up the world. And so to say that it's just like this select group of family, or these select few people in industry or media and all this stuff that are the cause of all the problems and the ills of the world is dumb as hell to say, because we see that the system breeds these people, and until we change the system, do the same shit over and over again, you know. And it's like these people that say, oh, we gotta get new politicians, you go out and vote, you need to vote, get these guys in there, but then they're either gonna become corrupted by the system in one form or another, or they're not gonna be able to sustain that, and there'll be a Republican or a Democrat in office next who will exploit the people, his constituents, in the system and the resources that his area allows them to, you know. So until we get rid of that incentive to be corrupt, you know, because of the monetary system, we're just gonna have the same problems over and over again. So that's why I really identify the Zeitgeist Movement, because it starts at the root cause of everything. We're not dealing with shit on the surface, all this bullshit that doesn't really have any bearing over what's going on in the world. You know, it's just merely a symptom of this incredibly profoundly sick society that we live in. Why comedy? It's funny, man. I mean, that's a great question. It's an amazing question. I ask myself that question a lot too, and I'm sure that there's reasons that I don't understand why I chose to be a comedian. I think a lot of it is just like the rawness of the human emotion, you know, and I hear comedians say all the time, like, oh, I just want to make you forget about the world, and I think that's bullshit, and I think it's stupid to say something like that, to say like, oh, I just want to make people laugh and forget about their problems. I think that's irresponsible to do something like that. I think as a comedian that you should bring awareness to the struggle and what's going on in the world, because you can, through laughter, you can make people realize how absurd something is. You really can. When people laugh about something, and that means they understand it, you know. And so like for me as comedy, I think it's also the reason why I chose comedy, I think, is also because, you know, it's one or the other, happy or sad, you know what I mean? And it's like kind of the human emotion. You're crying or you're laughing. Those are two totally different ends of the spectrum of what humans are capable of emotionally. And I always wanted to be on the good side of that, obviously. I like making people laugh. I like making people think through laughter as well. And you know, Bill Hicks, my favorite comedian, had a quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said basically, people ask him, like, do you think that you'll like ever run out of jokes? Do you think that like, where do you come up with your material and stuff like that? And he's like, no, you know, I come up with material through like holding anything up to the light of reason, and if it doesn't hold up, then I make fun of it. And I think that that's what we should do as comedians, is that when we find things that don't jive with reality, or we feel like are total bullshit, that we should make fun of those, you know. So like, for example, like when, you know, obviously there's millions of them, but when you see like the Pope come out and say that there needs to be a redistribution of wealth, he comes out, he's like, there needs to be a complete redistribution of wealth, while he's sitting in a city that's worth like trillions of dollars, wearing a helmet on his head that costs like $20 million, sitting in a $100 million chair. Yeah, asshole. Yeah, we should have a redistribution of wealth. How about you start? You know, you prick. Okay? Or the president coming on and saying, hey, you know, everyone's got to tighten their belts up. We're gonna get through this terrible economy and these economic downtimes. We're gonna, you know, we gotta start thinking more critically about how to save resources, and people are gonna have to do without, and this and that. And then this son of a bitch goes over to Brussels and Belgium and racks up a $1.5 million hotel bill for one night. Like literally, he rented 283 rooms out, you know? Like traveling carnivals use less rooms than what the president does for one night. But yet, so you look at that and you realize that someone that's saying, hey, we need to have a redistribution of wealth, or we need to tighten our belts with the economy and everything, everyone's got to, you know, do their part in this, and then you see the hypocrisy involved with the people that are saying it. I mean, to me, that's funny. I think that's bullshit, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous for them as leaders, quote unquote, to get up here and kind of chastise everyone, and then while they're sitting up there like the Pope, and everyone's come like, oh, what an awesome guy, he's such a sweet guy, redistribute wealth, you know, and take care of everyone. And this son of a, like, let's sell the Vatican, let's start selling the Vatican, okay? And then let's sell the Vatican. I think we could pay for a couple couple meals for some hungry motherfuckers in Africa, you know, if you would sell that helmet you're wearing, you prick asshole, you know. So those types of things, like when you look at that, and I think if you can make a joke about that, people understand it from a different perspective. You're not just going up there and just ranting and raving, oh, the Pope, he's an asshole, look at this. If you can make a joke about that, you make people think about it in a different way that they're not accustomed to. And then also at the same time, if they're able to laugh, they realize like, wow, that is bullshit, that is ridiculous, you know what I'm saying? And there's something needs to change, you know. I'm Chad Fisher, I'm a comedian and I'm an advocate of the Zeitgeist Movement.